This is our third career conference, and though it's a little different this year, we're excited about our lineup of events. On behalf of the Career Conference Committee, I'd like to thank our outstanding alumni who will be sharing their experience and wisdom with current JMU students. We're also grateful for the ongoing support of the Dean of the College of Arts and Letters, Dr. Robert Aguirre, who has kindly agreed to say a few words.
Well, thank you, everybody, and welcome once again to this very important event in your life and in the life of the College of Arts and Letters and JMU. I would like also to thank all of the organizers who've worked incredibly hard over the last many months to bring our alumni here, to set up the panels, to organize this event. It's a lot of work. But I can tell you that it's extremely important work because all of us who have the privilege of enjoying what I like to call the biweekly miracle want you to enjoy it also. And that means that at some point you're going to have to make your transition from JMU, where things are relatively structured for you. You have your degree and your requirements and your days and times that your courses meet. And that's all wonderful. And everyone can tell you once you leave JMU, and including our keynote speaker, who will be introducing in just a few moments, that once you leave JMU, it's a lot less like that. And there's a lot of uncertainty and anxiety and worry. I will tell you that I'm the parent of two college-aged young men, and we talk about this all the time. One of them is a student here. One of them decided for some reason to go to that university 2.5 hours south with a crazy orange and black outfits that they wear down there, and a really strange mascot. We won't talk about him. But in all seriousness, this is a really important part of your lives here as you're thinking about what you're going to do after JMU. And I just have a few things to say after having thought about this for many years and worked with many young people on this point in their career. And the first thing is that in the humanities and social sciences, communication fields where you're getting your degrees, most of the jobs that you are going to look for and that you are going to enjoy in the future are different than the kinds of career paths, let's say, that our friends over across the interstate in engineering have. So the way I like to put it is that if you're a chemical engineering major, it's very simple what you need to do, which is you need to drop the gerund from engineering and look for a job as a chemical engineer. I'm an English professor, so I'm fond of gerunds. If you're a mechanical engineering student, same thing. If you're a computer science major, you're getting a job in computer science. And for most of us, it's not that simple. It's not a linear path. It's a kind of wavy, curvy, uncertain, sometimes sideways and uneven path, a kind of squiggly line. One of my favorite writers who I'm going to recommend to you on this subject, and I recommend that you read his book. His name is George Anders. And the title of the book is You Can Do Anything, The Surprising Value of a Useless Liberal Arts Degree. Now, George Anders is a senior vice president at LinkedIn. He knows all about careers. He has an incredible database from that software platform. And what he likes to say, and I'm just going to rip this off here for a moment, is that the old-fashioned way of progressing through a career was through the metaphor of the ladder. You just got on the bottom rung and patiently you just climbed up this vertical set of slats until you got to the corner office. And that's not a model that works very much anymore. And what he likes to talk about, and I agree, is a different metaphor related called the lattice, not the ladder, but the lattice, like that thing that you might grow plants on in your garden. It's a kind of checkerboard of wood slats, some sideways, some vertical. And he likes this metaphor, as do I, because it suggests that you may find yourself hopping sideways in your career as you are also going up. So maybe your grandparents started in the mailroom at IBM, or some big corporation. And, over 40 years of drudgery, they finally got to the top. And these days, careers are a lot more uncertain and uneven. Now, that might be something that could be interpreted as a bit frightening. But actually, what I want to say to you is that because you have the superpowers of a great liberal arts education that you have received here at JMU, this is a world which is perfectly optimized for you. And you are perfectly optimized for it. So if you have a narrow vocational training, yes, you may be perfectly suited for the jobs of today. But what we find over many years of analysis and tracking people from college, not just in the first decade, the second decade, or the third decade after they leave university, is that liberal arts majors like yourself over time end up out earning and outperforming those who have the narrow kind of vocational degrees that sometimes you might look fondly at, like, maybe you room with a computer scientist and he's got an offer from, a software company, and you're like, wow, I still don't know what I'm going to do. I mean, that is a classic liberal arts dilemma. But what I want to say to you is be patient, trust in your education, keep learning and growing as you have been taught to do. And over time, you will find your place in the higher education and employment ecosystem. Maybe you're going to need another degree. You're perfectly optimized for that. Maybe you're going to need a professional degree or a graduate degree. That's something you are well suited to do. That can give you a boost. And maybe you're going to end up working in a company that hasn't even been imagined yet. And now I'm just going to hold up the kind of classic visual aid. When I was in college, way back when the dinosaurs roamed the earth, these things didn't exist. Computers that you put on desks didn't even exist. So now you know how old I am. And during my lifetime, the pace of technological change has accelerated. And people are doing all kinds of things now for money that I just would have never been able to tell you that would, bring home a paycheck to rent an apartment or buy a house or, put food on your table. There are all kinds of jobs now that weren't invented until very recently. And what this can tell you is that there are going to be all kinds of jobs in the future that we haven't even imagined now. So the best preparation for those jobs of the future is exactly the education that you are pursuing right now. Okay, that's hard because it's less certain, but actually you got to play the long game here. So I'm going to leave you with one final statistic, which I think encapsulates this idea. And this comes from Anders and many other people who've studied this. 3/4, 75% of adults are working in a profession unrelated to their undergraduate degree. 3/4 of working people are working in something that they didn't specifically train for. So what does that mean? That means those mental characteristics you have acquired of agility, of learning how to learn, of adaptability, of being able to work in a team, of being comfortable with uncertainty. All of these are sort of foundational ideals and skills of a great liberal arts education. And you may not have taken a course in uncertainty or in teamwork, but I can be assured that in all of your education, when you total it all up, you have endured that. And indeed, what better laboratory than the last 12 months, during a horrible pandemic, to have cultivated skills of adaptability and handling uncertainty and not knowing what the next month or the next 6 months is going to bring. So you have been forged in a certain fire, and that has made you strong. So one of the things I hope that you will take away from this conference is the opportunity to drink in deeply, the experience and the wisdom of all of the alums who have come back for this great conference to help you find your path from, the beautifully mowed lawns that are in the picture behind me, where everything is orderly and, Wilson Hall is symmetrical and all gives a perfect image of balance and order and symmetry and solidity, to that uncertain world where you will be prepared to thrive. So at this point, I'm going to hand things over to my esteemed colleague, Dr. Glenn Hastet, who is the academic unit head of our great Justice Studies Department, has served with distinction at JMU for many years as a professor of political science, as a writer of many books and articles, as a renowned speaker and thinker and a leader in our university. And so he has a few words to say to you now. Thank you, Glenn.
Thank you, Robert. This semester, the College of Arts and Letters and JMU lost a remarkable scholar, colleague, teacher, mentor, and friend with the passing of Professor Terry Beitzel, who was a member of the Justice Studies Department and director of the Mahatma Gandhi Center for Global Nonviolence. He taught social responsibility and justice issues of war, violence, and nonviolence and revolution. The list of his accomplishments and contributions to JMU and the global community is impressive and long. Terry made numerous contributions to the College of Arts and Letters in the university through his service on such committees as the College of Arts and Letters Faculty Advisory Committee, the Center for Civic Engagement Advisory Board, and the General Education Cluster 4 committees. Added to this is his founding of the International Journal of Responsibility, which is housed at JMU. Terry demonstrated a deep commitment to teaching in the liberal arts in collaborative interdisciplinary settings and developing courses on such topics as film and justice, conflict transformation, and violence and nonviolence. Among his most notable and varied contributions to teaching were working with students on independent studies and honors thesis projects, the development of a 4VA course, Civic Resistance and Engagement, hosting a visiting scholar following events in Charlottesville, collaborating with scholars abroad, and participating in an NPR program, Good Reason, broadcast on dissent in America. Terry was deeply committed to promoting the intellectual development of JMU students and their sense of social responsibility. He encouraged students to present and publish their work, including at the Cultivating for Peace Symposium he co-hosted in 2019. His mentorship of students continued after they graduated. He remained connected and engaged with alumni. Terry was an active supporter and participant in every Alumni Day conference run by Justice Studies and participated in previous iterations of the College of Arts and Letters Career Conference. Since his death, many alumni have been in touch with the Justice Studies Department to express how profound the loss is and how much they valued and respected him and how much a positive influence he has made in their academic careers and lives. His work and legacy continue in the lives of students, colleagues, friends around the world whom he inspired. His legacy is captured by the overarching question is teaching, service, and how he lived his life. Who is responsible to do what and for whom? Thank you. Dr. Aguirre?
Thank you, Glenn, for that moving tribute. I count it as one of the great experiences of my life to have been able to know Dr. Beitzel for just a few years, and his passing is indeed a great, great loss to JMU and to our community. Okay, so what I'd like to do now is introduce you to our keynote speaker, who is a distinguished alumna of JMU, of the College of Arts and Letters, of SMAD, of Media Arts and Design, and also of our creative writing program. We are very privileged to have her with us today. And I just want to tell you a little bit about her many accomplishments. If I were to read them all, we would be here all day. So I've done some compressing because she's been very busy since she left JMU, as you can see when you Google her and find all the things that she's been up to online. So she is currently a staff writer. This is Mia Brabham. She is a staff writer at Grace and Grind. She is a renowned and flexible and highly adaptable content creator, a blogger extraordinaire, a writer on culture, arts, food, and sports. Her list of bylines is very, very long. And she is most recently the author of a new book, which is available on her website, entitled Note to Self. So please join me in welcoming our distinguished alumna and keynote speaker of this conference, Mia Brabham. Mia.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you so much for the introduction. Thank you for the applause. I see you out there. I first want to say, before I start, that I'm sending my whole heart and every warm hug I have to those who've been touched by the life of cherished faculty member, Dr. Terry Beitzel. I wanted to share this really quickly. Last year, a woman named Amanda Klutz, I don't know if you all know her, lost her husband, who was a Broadway star, Nick Cordero, to COVID. And she shared that in order to move through this grief on her very worst days, she views her time with Nick as an era, as a season in which she got to know him and love him and experience life with him. And for those of you who had the luck and pleasure and joy of knowing Dr. Terry Beitzel closely, what an era that was. Grief is big and loss is irreplaceable, but love can be so, so healing. So even if it's only a little, lean into each other and lean into love at this time and those beautiful memories. So I wanted to say that first, but before we begin, I want to thank you all so much for having me at the Liberal Arts in the Working World Insights from Alumni Conference. And thanks for everybody that's here and coming this morning, because it is a choice. I don't think anybody dragged you here, which is pretty cool that you just decided to show up. And it's so good to be back kind of physically at JMU. I know we have some backgrounds up. Dr. Aguirre has a picture of JMU, which I love. So that's pretty awesome. But I want to try something really quickly. I'm not going to make anybody turn on their cameras. That would be really awful of me. It's probably too early for that before noon. But if you can, put in the chat, I want to see something. Say, me, I, yes, if you've ever cried in public, specifically at JMU, if you're willing to share. There's got to be one brave soul out there. Yes, thank you, Keely. Oh my goodness, there's so many. Okay, I feel comforted. Okay, also put in this chat, have you ever been told to stay positive or suck it up or look at the bright side while you're getting your education during a pandemic? Has someone told you this? Yes. Way more yeses than I'd like to see, but okay, also good to know. And also, if you feel like you're kind of in an in-between, like you don't really know what you're doing or where you're going, and you're all figuring it out. Anybody out there? Yes. Oh my gosh, there's so many. Okay, we're gonna have great things to talk about today. So when I started writing what would become my first book, I didn't even know it was a book at the time. One, because honestly, it was a phone note, a note on my phone. And two, I was in my second year of college and a student at JMU, like all of you. There's one moment I remember distinctly, although the memory is kind of blurry at this point, not because I'm getting old, although my back is starting to ache during this pandemic, currently sitting on the floor on a pillow. But it was physically blurry because I was crying actually on my way to work. I worked at the JMU Career Center at the time, loved my job, worked there 3 years with amazing, amazing people. And it was one of those cries where you aren't sobbing or sniffling. It was like the tears were just coming. They were streaming, they were warm, they were flowing like a waterfall. And as hard as you try to stop them, they just don't. So you just let them rip and it's coming down your face. And it sounds really dramatic, but I felt like everything I knew in that moment was falling apart in the moments that followed. And it eventually led me to write down what would be one of my very first lessons, which would, 7 years later, be put into a book of quotes called Note to Self. See right there. I say eventually because it didn't quite start there. It wasn't at that exact moment where the lesson hit me in the face, although that would have been nice. But in that moment, I was mad. I was sad. I was grieving with what I had just found out. And it's really hard when that happens to see anything past what's right in front of you, right? It was between that moment and healing from that moment that I wrote the first quote. Then, over the years, after I graduated from JMU, as I navigated my first job in sports in Washington, D.C., as I endured the exciting but grueling, really hard world of entertainment in LA, as I returned to the East Coast after leaving what I considered my job, my dream job at 24, in pursuit of my truest work and self, that I returned to this very note to write again and again and again. And when I jotted down these lessons, I was almost always what I call in the in-between. So I was between heartbreak and love, between a no and a yes, between grief and joy, adolescence and adulthood, you know, all of those things. And I was also, at that moment I cried, between what was once Duke's, I think that's not a thing anymore, and now D Hall, the new D Hall. And I was quite literally in the in-between, on my way to work, crying on this crosswalk in front of SSC. And it felt like, you know, the white columns at SSC were falling in front of me. One thing, I know I can't see you, so in the comments or in the chat again, please put down if you are the kind of person who thinks of a response to something or someone 7 years later. Anybody? Like you wake up and you're like, dang it, I should have said that to someone. Yes, oh my gosh, it's the worst. That's me too. And so I want to say that because these lessons and realizations came to me at pivotal moments, but not, you know, the moment after. It was a month later, a year later, 2 years later, as I was walking down the street or stepping into a warm shop on a cold day or restless while on an airplane. Remember writing in those? I don't, it's a memory now. Sometimes even perfectly, finally at peace with something and at ease. These in-betweens, these are important moments too. So that day, I dried my eyes before stepping into work like a professional, but I forgot that wiping the tears away doesn't immediately mean that your eyes get less red or puffy. So my boss, Emily, who I actually think works at Carrier now, she's at the library, she took one look at me and she knew something was wrong. And so I confided in her and she told me something that I'll never forget, and I'm going to share it with you. She said, the reality of it now is not the reality of it forever. I promise. I didn't know it then, but she was talking about the pain and the power of the in-between. And these in-betweens have made me who I am today. So the other day I was leafing through this book. It's called Inner Sky by Mari Andrews. And I came across that word again, the in-between. And she talked about how our culture is not set up to support this in-between, this waiting. We have rituals for beginnings and ends. We have baby showers, engagement parties, New Year's gatherings, graduations, but nothing for the in-between. And we're bad at it. We're just bad at it. And right now, I think we're in the biggest in-between many of us have experienced. More specifically for you as students, not only are you coping with this, you know, in-between of this amazing time where you're at college and you're, you know, about to enter the working world, but you're also coping with the very real reality of a pandemic. And I'm going to go out on a limb here like I did in the beginning. That's why I kind of gauged if this has happened to you. I'm going to guess, you know, and now it's confirmed that all of you have been told at least once, which is so bad, to look on the bright side or stay positive in conversations about how a chunk of your college years looks very different than you probably dreamed. And I don't know if anyone has told you this, but you don't have to be okay right now. Before we dive in, I'm going to tell you that. Maybe you've lost family members or friends, or you know of people who have, and you had to move through this year with a heavy heart. I see you. Maybe you missed your high school prom or graduation, and you're absolutely crushed. I see you. Maybe the murders of people of color by white supremacists or the Spirit Rock attack right here on campus has rattled you, disappointed you, infuriated you, and most fundamentally frightened you. Believe me, I see you. Maybe your study abroad trip got canceled. Maybe you're having a hard time because you're unexpectedly adjusting to online classes or teaching them. Thank you, professors. It's got to be hard. I see you. I see you. I see all of you. And I'm not here today to tell you to be positive. I'm here to meet you where you are. So first, you don't have to do this now, but I think we should all at some point today just grab a pillow, let out a big scream, and then we're going to move on because I'm here to help you as you cope and prepare for your next chapter. So a lot of speeches, you know, are about the future. And as a person constantly looking forward to the future, nothing is more important than hope. But I'm also a big believer in addressing the now. To me, positivity isn't always about exuding happiness or excitement. Positivity is honesty. It's acceptance. It's leaning into the emotions you have, welcoming them in for tea, sitting with these emotions, asking them curious questions, and then bidding them farewell at the moment that's right for you. We can't sit in it forever, but we do first have to fully accept and meet ourselves where we are. Like I said, you're allowed to be angry. You're allowed to be furiously sad. You're allowed to eventually be tired of feeling all those things, like they just get pent up and you're like, I'm done feeling this way. So the question then becomes, what will I do with that? I hope it's okay if today I share a few things, you didn't really ask for, but you may need, because I know they helped me when I was in your shoes. That's why I wrote them. And I can only imagine being in those shoes at a time like now. So, in these type of speeches, usually it can feel kind of disconnected because people read other people's quotes and, other people's lessons. But I have to be honest, when I was writing this, it also felt weird to write my own. And I'm like, this is weird. Go figure. It's all just weird. Who knew? But anyway, here we go. Here are 6 lessons I learned that I put in note to self as you embrace this time, this in between, and prepare for your future and your careers. All right. We feeling okay? Temperature check. Everybody's good in the chat? It's my dancing, my dance. I love it. All right. So note number 1, you only grow smarter each time something doesn't happen the way you planned it. At the beginning of the pandemic, I stumbled across a newer TED Talk from author Elizabeth Gilbert titled, "It's okay to be overwhelmed. Here's what to do next," which pretty much sums up the speech. I can leave now. But she says, like many others, she was feeling a loss of control during this pandemic. But that control is actually a myth to begin with because we never had it anyways. Now, for those of you like me who have anxiety, it may not be the most comforting thing to hear, but in a way, I'll explain in a second, it kind of is. Because this means we can stop worrying about what we can't control and focus all the energy we have and we can muster, if any, on what we can, over and over and over again. So don't be afraid to make plans. Make plans for what you want to do, where you want to work, who you want to work for. And guess what? Like a shady friend, they might get canceled, but you have to make another and another and another. You know how people say forgiveness isn't for the other person, it's for you? Well, that's how I kind of feel about plans, because plans are for right now, the present, to give you structure and purpose and something to look forward to and work forward to. It's not for the future because that's not ours just yet. All we can do is work towards where we think we want to go. And we cannot, let me tell you from personal experience, you cannot be afraid to pivot. You're going to have to do that a lot. I can promise you that. So you don't set a benchmark for yourself. You don't even give yourself a chance to fall short. So you've got to start somewhere. And it's proven that when you write things down, they're more likely to come true. I've been doing this for 3 years, and every single thing, I have a yearly goal, every single thing I've written down, it's come true. Maybe not a year later, but 2 years later. So highly recommend it. So a quick story, when I lived in LA, I was at my lowest point. I really, really hated my job, to be honest. And my mom told me something. I was on the phone with her. She said, Mia, you need to make a 3-month plan. It doesn't matter if you make it to the end of those 3 months and you change your mind and you're like, I don't want to do that anymore. Or if it's not finished at the end of the 3 months, just work towards something. So I decided that I'd make a web series so I can start writing again, which is something I love to do, but I'd stopped. And it ended up, it's done, but it took a year and it was a lot of work, a lot of late nights, a lot of tears, not at JMU, but in public, elsewhere. You'll do that too, but it's okay. I know it's daunting, but you have to ask yourself, I always say this, what's worse, the state I'm in right now or just starting? Let me tell you something, and you'll hear this from April Armstrong at the end of the week. I'm very excited for her keynote. And I already know she's right, honestly. There's no wrong place to start your future, none. And I have an idea, actually. I'm going to do this. I want all of you to write down a 3-month plan or a 3-month, it doesn't have to be a plan, but like a goal. I'm going to put my email in the chat. And on today's 24th, on June 24th, I'm going to check in. I'm going to take all those emails and reply and be your accountability buddy and say, hey, did it get done? And if not, I'll give you a pep talk. I'm big on those. So there we go. All righty. Note number 2. People aren't always going to understand you, but don't persecute them for it. If you believe in what you have to say, that's enough. In the in-between, you might face some tough decisions that might not be pretty to others, but they're right for you. I saw a tweet recently. I'm a huge Twitter head. I love Twitter. And it said something like, your calling wasn't a conference call. So when I graduated from college, I wanted to move straight to LA. I did the JMU in LA program, domestic study abroad. It was awesome. But I was actually at a career conference a lot like this and was offered a job in DC, and it was a great job. So when I made the decision to take it, I had a friend tell me that I was selling myself short and giving up by not going to LA. Yeah, like I originally wanted. I was really heartbroken when they told me that. But they didn't get that I had a plan. I had a freaking plan. So during my time in DC, I ended up interviewing Simone Biles. I created and produced a series. Even though I was an assistant editor, I somehow got to do that. And it's still a show that they do today. I met the love of my life, who I'm still with today. He turned on lights for me because I realized my face was shadowy. And not only this, but I returned to this company 2 years later to work and be paid as an on-air host, which I went to LA to do and never got the opportunity to do there. And none of that would have happened if I didn't take that opportunity, that detour that actually became my true path. In LA, when I left the job to go work back at E, I had a coworker tell me I was making the biggest mistake of my life. Later, that company actually laid off its workers, which is super sad. But now, because I took that job at E, I'm actually on that same show as a freelancer this month, working for them again. So when it comes to advice, be wary of taking it from those who limit themselves, because they'll often try to limit you too. It's not your job to help unsupportive friends or family understand you. Listen, you're already gonna have a job at work with lots of responsibilities. It's not one of them. When an opportunity presents itself, even if it's not the one you had originally envisioned or that other people are praising, if you believe it will grow you, if you believe you'll learn from it, you should take it. Note number 3, you're made up of wonderful little chapters, tales meant to be read. Out of all the things the world will convince you to forget the power and importance of, never underestimate how extraordinary your story is. This is one of my favorite ones. I say this all the time, but storytelling is not just reserved, go figure, for writing majors or SMAD majors or communication majors. There's absolutely no greater weapon than knowing your story and how you've grown from your experiences. So there's a panel this week at the conference called Selling the Strengths of a Liberal Arts Degree. And this is exactly what we mean. It is absolutely crucial that we know the story about ourselves. And this does not mean, people, that we have it all figured out, because we don't. Spoiler alert, sometimes you still don't as you get older. It just means that we know where we've been so that we can get to where we're going. This time can be really isolating. I'm sure you've all felt it. I moved to a new place where I knew no one. I feel it. But sometimes it's good to be isolated. It's good to just sit with yourself. Like, we have to learn how to do that. So I challenge you all, if you are at JMU still, if you can do this safely, go to the Arboretum, sit with a notepad. Or if you're at home, cozy up in between sessions, because you are here to do this, and just kind of ask yourself, wow, what is the exact moment that led me to studying what I studied? When did my passion for this thing begin? Who and what has made me who I am? What mistakes have I learned from? Write down your experiences. And if you're writing this down, you should write this. Write down specific examples. Write down how you pivoted over the course of the pandemic, how you use this time to take up a new skill or research something interesting, how JMU Liberal Arts Degree has taught you to be a critical thinker. A really quick aside, people love that. I actually got hired during college as a server simply because I went to JMU. The guy was like, yeah, you got to be smart. You can figure this out. You don't need experience. Like, you'll figure it out. So sell that you're a critical thinker, how you tangibly adjusted to online classes or simply to disappointment, because this time has been full of a lot of it. The story we tell ourselves about ourselves is the most important one. Repeat it with me. The story we tell ourselves about ourselves is the most important one we will ever tell. What happens to you in your in-between is your story. And your story is going to get you to your summit. Right now, I think you guys are some of the most valuable people. You're more valuable than ever. You're more valuable than when we went to college and graduated, because you've had to pivot more than anyone else. And so we aren't going backwards, but this is a chance to reinvent yourself and the story you'll tell the world about who you are. Note number 4. Sometimes I think, how will I ever compare to that? And then I remember, I can't. So stop comparing your in-between to someone else's. You've got to stop. That person on social media who already got a job or an internship, I don't know how, but they're not you. Those classmates who've already been accepted into grad school, that's what they're doing. It's not your grad school. When I lived in Converse Hall, which was literally the best year, sophomore year, so much fun, my roommate Ava actually had a canvas that hung above her bed. And it didn't hit me at first, I didn't get it for a long time, but it said, a candle loses nothing by lighting another candle. You have to cheer those around you on, because 1, you'd want them to do that for you. And 2, for all of you that are still waiting on your yes, it's coming. I once heard someone compare waiting for a job or internship to waiting in a lunch line. The workforce is a big place. I promise y'all, lunch is not gonna run out. It doesn't matter what year it is. I read this to my mom actually. She said, Mia, lunch does run out sometimes. I went to Panda Express and they were out of my chicken. But guess what? The next day, it'll come back. So truly, you really aren't gonna miss out. I promise you there's enough jobs out there for you. Someone once asked me, Mia, how do you have so much confidence? And to be very honest with you, I do not think about this on a daily basis. I don't really think I do have an absurd amount or any amount really. I just think to myself, I think subconsciously, like, I hate to break it to you or anybody who thinks that, but I'm stuck with me. Like, I'm not leaving this body. You're stuck with you. And to me, it's just like, why let all of that go to waste, wishing I was someone else, So embrace who you are. You've got something that, someone else, the person who has that job or that internship or got into that grad school, they don't have that. And that is your specific power. So you have to find out what that means to you, rather than using your in-between to figure out how you can be more like someone else who's on a completely different journey than you. Figure out how you can be more of you. I always say this. I do a lot of, like I said, I worked at JMU Career Center, so I'm very passionate about helping people get jobs and, turning their lessons into their own story. But getting a job or internship is like dating or falling in love. You want someone for all of you, not because you're someone else. So, hot take, but I personally don't think that envy or jealousy is inherently a bad thing or a bad feeling. I do think it's about how you wield it. So if you wield it to be hurtful, yes, it's bad, but big emotions are like superpowers. You can honestly use that energy, that feeling you get when you see someone got a job, and just use it to set yourself apart instead and pour into yourself, in your applications especially. So speaking of, how are we doing, guys? Everybody good? Okay, great. So speaking of, note number 5, don't wait a second for anyone or anything. Give yourself the green light over and over. So I was writing this and I was thinking about how I've gotten into every door I've gotten into. And I think it's because I actually make a practice of creating opportunities for myself before, others are even presented to me. So when I was younger, I wanted to be a filmmaker. So I started making YouTube videos when I was 12, which is crazy. Why did my parents let me do that? I don't know. But it did land me my first internship at E-News. So they must have been on to something. When I pivoted from production and decided I want to challenge myself to do non-visual storytelling. So I pivoted to become a writer. I started a blog where I could publish my own pieces first so people would let me write for them. When I was hired to do what I do now, which is host Bigger Bolder Baking's podcast, I had 2 of my own before this. One that I actually made in my last 10 days of undergrad at JMU, and Daisy Brenneman's on it, who's here today. You guys want to go listen to it, and a ton of other professors and mentors you might know. They're awesome. So throughout your career, especially with the help of JMU alum, you will be helped 2 doors. But the thing that's going to get you through the door is you and what you bring to the table. No one else can do that for you. So make a meal before you get there. If you want to write right now, put together a zine with your friends and be the editor-in-chief. If you want to be a politician, if you do justice studies, run a campaign to get, like hand sanitizer at every door on campus, if that's not already a thing. If you look up to someone or you want to be like someone, volunteer. Don't just say, hey, can I have some of your time, which people will give you, but say, can I be your assistant for the day? Can I help you on a project you're doing? Send me something to help you with, some research. Some of you may be waiting for an internship or a job to give you this experience, but it is 2021, people. You don't have to wait for that. When you don't see a way, you have to forge a way. Proactivity, I promise you, will never go out of style. So I promise you, pandemic or not, people will never, ever, ever stop wanting young, hungry, self-starting, scrappy, hardworking people. You can use your in-between to make a way for yourself. And finally, we're almost here, guys. Note number 6, your emotional connection to everything is your strength. Use it. Every generation of college students experiences the in-between, but yours is a very specific, unique brand, unlike anybody else's. Like I said before, I truly believe that because of everything you've all experienced during this time, the rejection, the heartbreak, the setbacks, the reckoning with racial injustice, you'll be the most empathetic workers and leaders this world has seen yet. If you're not a person of color, I just want to say you're allowed to be, and you should be, as outraged as everything going on. You can be equally as outraged. And it's a wonderful, wonderful time to practice being there for one another, because this is what you're going to be doing as leaders. Ask the hard questions. Ask, how are you actually doing? And not just, what's new with you? What's up? Hey, ask, how can I best support you right now in an active way, and not, oh, I'm so sorry that's happening to you. We've already seen how companies are giving, workers more mental health days and sick leave and spaces for important conversations about race and equity, which there will be a panel on this week actually at the conference, all because we're embracing emotions in the workplace and not just leaving it at the door, which is impossible. I don't know why for years they did this. We're humans. My mom even said this too. I keep talking about her, but she helped me, read through this. And she was like, that's so true. We were told to leave it at the door in our generation. And we're kind of getting away from that. And that's true. And it's important. When I was a page in LA, I was paid $12 an hour, which is wild. We didn't have health insurance. And after everything that happened in 2020, now these pages are getting $20 an hour and they have health insurance their entire year. So these conversations are important. Change is possible. Change is slow, but it happens. And empathy is power. When we're fighting for ourselves, we're alone. But when we're fighting for something bigger, suddenly we belong. You have to harness that empathy right now so you can be better leaders now and down the road. Because guess what? Your life, your work environment, your company culture, and your productivity is going to flourish because of that. So it's crazy to think that one day, around a year ago in March, literally right about now, I decided I was going to write a book. And funny enough, y'all, this outfit, I got this because I was supposed to wear it. I was going to host on the red carpet at Comic-Con, and I didn't get to wear it clearly. And now I'm here. So it's just cool, how everything turns out, and the in-between and the heartbreak, it leads to something better, because I'm so excited to be here. I really do. I would rather be here than Comic-Con, to be honest. That would have been crazy. But, a year ago that happened, this all happened. We found out the pandemic, and I just decided I was going to write a book a year ago. And all those little lines and the lessons from my in-betweens, they added up to something bigger. The reality of it now is not the reality of it forever, I promise. My boss, Emily, who said that, was absolutely right. It gets better. It gets great even. I promise you all that no part of your story right now is going to go to waste. Not the latest nights, not the rejections, not the risk. If you're still reading this long, long love letter to you, or I guess listening to it, you're not reading it, I hope you know that anything is possible from here. Like I said, I got my first job out of school because I attended the SMAD career day, similar to this one. I wasn't even trying. I just was talking to someone, an alum, and he was like, you should come work for us. I was like, great. So if you're here today at the College of Arts and Letters Career Conference, I am absolutely 100% positive that you're going to go on to do great things. Why? Because great things happen to people who show up. Funny enough, in the days I was writing this address, I was on a walk and I passed a store, and it had this message in the window by Cicely Tyson, who I love. It said, challenges make you discover things about yourself you never really knew. So I ask you, what do you plan to do with those challenges? You're waiting. You're in between. Will you take notes about your story, or are you going to write this time off completely? Will you make a plan, or will you keep going in circles? Will you follow your dreams and your instincts, or someone else's? Will you keep comparing yourself, or finally accept and work on who you are? Will you heed to every red light that's given to you, or are you going to give yourself the dang green? Will you stay quiet about the wrongdoings you see in your classroom, in your community, or will you speak up? Your in-between doesn't have to become a book like I did, but maybe one day it's going to become a story you tell in your next job interview. Maybe it will be, where you meet your future partner, or the person who connects you to your dream job in 10 years. Maybe, just maybe, it will help you become more of you. These in-betweens, these hard times, they don't define you. You get to define them. And I wanted to save this bomb for the very end, but listen closely. Spoiler, your in-between isn't really actually an in-between. It's kind of the main event. One of my favorite quotes from Note to Self is, it's a beautiful, exciting thing to know you're not quite where you want to be, but you're where you're supposed to be. Don't rush this part. Don't rush the time you get here with friends and professors and this community that's so amazing. My boyfriend always still laughs at me. He goes, you left JMU all those years ago and you still hold doors for people. I'm like, yes, I will do that forever. Don't wish this time away just because it's not how you thought it would look. Sit in this, dwell in it together. Give yourself the right to grieve, to feel it all, and then lean in. Do your best to make the memories you can safely, please. That doesn't mean they're any lesser. That means they're even more creative. They're more meaningful. They're more intentional. These years aren't wasted if you don't allow them to be. Life is still here for all of us if we're all lucky enough to be here and alive today. So you should live it. Thank you to Daisy Brenneman, one of my favorite professors during my time at JMU, for inviting me to do this. Thank you to the College of Arts and Letters for having me here. And thank you to all of you again for showing up. Because again, you didn't have to, but you're here. This is crazy. Showing up is one of the most powerful things we can do for ourselves and each other. So again, thank you.